This particular document has Baba's signature. So it is important that people get an accurate, truthful, independent, impartial, and correct report on what is being done about Baba's commitment to Kenyans when he signed the 10-point agenda. We are here to make sure political fraud is not committed on Kenyans in the name of Baba. That is why we are here. We must protect Baba's legacy. That is our duty as members of ODM, as members of Linda Mwananchi, as people who worked with Baba. Secondly, whether it is NADCO or whether it is the 10-point agenda, these documents were made in the name of the people. So there must be a people's report, not what you saw yesterday, a conspiracy of some sort. The people themselves must give a verdict. And what we are going to give here today is the people's report on what they think on the implementation of NADCO and the 10-point agenda. And finally, we all have national values in our constitution. There must be accountability. When leaders make certain public commitments, they must be held accountable. What we are trying to do here is to hold those who signed this to be accountable to Kenyans. So people may ask, how did we get about in compiling this report? What was our methodology? We did exactly what is expected in a situation like this. We had broad surveys, we contacted people by phone, by email, we asked questions, we engaged with the public. What do you think has been achieved on these particular issues? NADCO had 10 points, 10-point agenda had 10 points. So Kenyans have given us feedback. It is this feedback that we are now communicating to the rest of the world so that people can understand this. We looked at government records. We reviewed records in parliament, which bills have been passed that were supposed to be anchored on either NADCO or the 10-point agenda. We looked at what has happened in the executive. How are they conducting executive business? Are they complying with the 10-point agenda? We looked at the judiciary. What decisions have been made in terms of the rule of law and constitutionalism? And we looked at the reports of other independent organizations, especially those in the civil society like Oxfam and the rest of them. So what we are presenting to you here is not something we just sat somewhere and created. It is a product of a consultative process, a scientific process, and with very good methodology. Now, how does our report relate to what was released yesterday? Let me start by telling you people the joke of the miniskirt. How do you define a miniskirt? A miniskirt should be long enough to cover the subject matter, but short enough to arouse interest. So if you look at what was launched yesterday, it is inimically short on substance. In fact, Mheshimiwa Obadia Barongo and Clive Gisario here was laughing at their report on leadership and integrity. And since we are not propagandists, we are just people who like to give people correct information. If you look at their report on page 13, this is the report on leadership and integrity. It has 2 paragraphs. First paragraph has 15 words. Second paragraph has 35 words. 50 words on leadership and integrity. So their report is short on imagination. It is short on facts, short on truth. It is basically something that is designed to mislead and misinform. If you look at ours, you can count the words for yourself, the paragraphs, so that you get an accurate representation of what it is. Secondly, we are here to separate facts from fiction. There was a lot of fiction yesterday. And we want Kenyans to get involved in politics with facts. So we will present to you the facts, and you make your judgment. And we will invite other players, civil society, to make also their own report. So you can compare their report, our report, and the civil society's report, and other people's reports, and your own report and your own judgment as a Kenyan. You must also understand that this particular agenda was time-bound. there were key performance indicators which were to drive the political engagement that was being mooted between UDA and ODM. I use the word mooted informally because it was not yet agreed. Baba had made it very clear there'll come a time when we review the union based on these key performance indicators. Then we decide whether to proceed or to withdraw or to do something else. Yesterday we were being told that this was not time-bound, that this can be implemented ad infinitum until the world ends. And you saw there was a lot of confusion. You didn't know whether UDA was representing a report on their manifesto or they were doing the 10-point agenda. You didn't know where it started and where each ended. So we will not allow them to corners, that they set their own exam, they write their own exam, they mark their own exam, they award themselves marks. We cannot allow them. That does not happen. So we are here as the people to give them a record. Now, this report, I'll just give you some highlights, and I'll not go into details because they'll all be presented. But let's take the issue of audit of the 2022 presidential elections, what we called opening the server. There was an item like that. No work has been done on that. To date, people are asking IEBC, and we are asking them again here. If you do not address the issue of technology, not just the technology itself, but whoever supplies that technology for purposes of the next general elections, then what have you achieved? That was here. It has not been done, and they were too afraid to address it there. Nobody talked about it, opening of the servers. Did you hear anything about that? Confidence in the IEBC. They bragged that IEBC has been reconstituted. But ask yourself the question, has the new IEBC inspired confidence in the people of Kenya? When there are questions on how the selection process was done, when there's ultimate suspicion of close personal and other connections between those who are put into IEBC and those who are holding high offices in government and influential positions even in ODM, there are issues that must be addressed. So we wish IEBC well, and we are going to support IEBC. But we cannot bury our heads in the sand that there are no credibility questions. So we need to discuss these things. The cost of living crisis. They talked a lot about cost of living crisis. But I want to ask you and ask Kenyans, do you feel better off today than you were 3 years ago? That is a question they ought to have answered there. Does your shilling buy you more today or less than it did 3 years ago? Those are the questions that people and wananchi want to know. We don't want to be told the inflation has dropped from here to here. When the inflation was up here, the cost of goods went up to that point. They've not come down. The incomes have not grown. So don't tell us about inflation, exchange rate, and all those things. The fundamental question, are Kenyans better off today than they were 3 years ago? And the answer to that is no. Compensation for victims of police brutality during demonstrations. It's not been done. We are told there'll be 2 billion. In the supplementary budget, it will be brought to the House. We will pass it. Who knows how they arrived at the 2 billion? Who knows the number of the victims? Who decided that a broken leg is worth this? Who decided that when you are raped, this is a compensation you should get? Who debated those issues? We don't know. The Victims' Compensation Fund has not been activated. We know that. What about justice? What about accountability? Yeah? Where is that question? Nobody talked about it because to them, you beat somebody, you maim them, you rape them, you dismember them, then you give them cash. And then you tell them. And then they made a very curious statement that we need a law to protect victims of demonstrations. Where on earth? The Constitution already guarantees it. We don't need another law. That was euphemism for bringing a law to regulate demonstrations. Yeah? You heard that. So when you look at the report, those are the questions you should ask yourself. Corruption. This government is mute on corruption. They don't talk about it. I challenge you to tell me the last time you had a senior government official talking about corruption. Tell me when. Oxfam's report, in terms of success rate, EACC has the lowest ever since it was constituted in the late 90s, 9% on corruption. They cannot talk about corruption. And I'll give you some basic examples. What just happened recently, which you saw. They leased sugar mills. Didn't they say so? And they told you it will bring efficiency. Did you ever hear of a valuation of the sugarcane that was in the nucleus estate? No. There was no valuation. It is like somebody giving you a supermarket to run full of stock in that supermarket and just telling you, I'll pay you rent for the floor space. Not the stock in the shelves. I hope you're getting me. So they took the nucleus estate of public sugar mills. They are turning it into sugar, selling and getting money. That is open theft. And whoever is doing that, in another 19 months, tutakutana on that issue, because that is theft. It is like walking into a government office and walking out with the chairs. That's what it is. So there are many, many issues. Corruption, nothing is happening. They'll tell you, okay, rule of law, constitutionalism. There is no government in the history of this country whose initiatives have been declared illegal and unconstitutional in the number that this administration has had. Whether they are appointing advisors, illegal. They are appointing cars, illegal. Just go and do a count. No government has had that record. Everything they touch, illegal. This, illegal. That, illegal. So where is constitutionalism? Where is the rule of law? So my friends, we have a lot of work to do, but to basically tell the Kenyans the truth and to ask them that if you truly cared about Raila's legacy, then please, this is not the way to go. This is fraud. This is unacceptable. This is not what Baba wanted. And this is just part of the scheme, to confuse Kenyans. And I hope when they'll have an opportunity to read our report, which is here, they will know the truth. Thank you and God bless you.